Tonight, investigation update. Nothing suspicious about the Fish Creek wildfire. Coming back to life. 4 zombie fires reignite north of Fort Nelson. And a steep penalty. A hunter's fined after killing a caribou out of season. Good evening and thank you for joining us. And we begin tonight with the city of Fort St. John saying there is nothing suspicious about the wildfire that broke out in the Fish Creek Community Forest. The fire started May 1st and quickly grew to over 50 hectares in size. The day before, the city issued a press release saying there had been 8 suspicious fires over the past 2 months. The BC Wildfire Service was working with the Fort St. John Fire Department and the RCMP looking into the cause of the fire. 19 homes were evacuated. They were allowed to return home the next day. Now, preliminary findings indicate the fire is considered to be non-suspicious and was not deliberately set. The city says a phased reopening of the community forest will begin today. And 4 more wildfires coming back to life 70 kilometers north of Fort Nelson. According to the BC Wildfire Service, the largest growing to 80 hectares in size. They're all burning out of control. The Wildfire Service says recent dry temperatures and the wind helping the fires to reignite. Now, crews are responding to the blazes based on the risk to the public and the potential for growth. Firefighters are having to deal with fallen trees, so aircrafts have been called in to assist in the fight. 11 fires are burning currently in the Fort Nelson zone, all of which are holdover fires from 2 years ago. There's no real reprieve in the weather forecast with windy conditions. There is potential for new fires and rapid growth. The fire service is reminding the public to report any new fires and to be extra cautious this weekend. Well, the province is helping communities across British Columbia prepare for emergencies. The city of Fort St. John receiving $4.2 million to help prepare for disasters. The money will go to flood risk reduction in the Bafo-Coulee watershed. It'll help with stormwater planning and sewage pipe protection for local and neighboring communities. Acting Mayor Jim LeQuire says the improvements will reduce flood risks, safeguard critical infrastructure, and strengthen the city's readiness for extreme weather events. A hunter has been fined for killing wildlife not in open season. Adam Ward Patterson pled guilty to charges. He was fined just over $5,000 for killing a northern mountain caribou near Pink Mountain. The incident occurred in October of 2022. The animal was initially thought to be a white-tailed deer buck. Ward Patterson, however, reported the incident to the BC Conservation Service after determining the animal was in fact a female caribou. Northern mountain caribou are a species at risk. Ward Patterson is prohibited from hunting or accompanying hunters anywhere in British Columbia for the next 3 years. The Green Party of BC says it will not support the Infrastructure Project Act that's meant to speed up natural resource development in the province.
Under our agreement, we are free to vote how we see best on this one, and we're not expecting it to result in the fall of the government, but we do need to stand on principle and represent the people that we're representing.
Infrastructure Minister Bowen Ma says the legislation proposed last week would accelerate major public and private projects, including oil and gas, mines, and other natural resource operations. But it would also include building hospitals and schools. The Greens believe the bill would give the NDP government sweeping powers to bypass environmental assessment, municipal authority, and the jurisdiction of First Nations. The growing number of alarming and violent assaults in BC hospitals has the opposition party calling for the creation of a dedicated police force. Here's Rob Buffum with a response from BC's health minister.
After a string of high-profile attacks in hospitals, including a patient strangling a nurse unconscious at Vancouver General, the opposition is calling for police in some healthcare settings.
Times have changed, and I think that we've seen more than enough evidence of dangerous situations in hospitals, particularly involving weapons.
The health minister points to security guards with extra training who have been stationed in hospitals over the past 3 years. They're called Relational Security Officers, or RSOs.
We've got 781 of these across BC, and we're seeing that the rates of violence are coming down and that the WorkSafe BC claims are coming down as well.
The Health Ministry credits the RSOs with an 8% drop in violent incidents and a 13% decline in WorkSafe BC time loss claims. But Sturco points to this response from the Safety Minister Monday about their training.
There is not an expectation that they will intervene in situations that could be dangerous to them. As a matter of fact, they're told when they are in potential situations of danger to retreat and to call the police of jurisdiction.
The Health Ministry issued a statement Thursday advising the RSOs do in fact have heightened training that includes dealing with violence prevention, restraint education, active shooters, and managing aggressive behavior. Not good enough, says Sturco, who thinks hospitals need the equivalent of transit police, noting the new guards don't carry guns, and there's been a series of assaults with weapons on nurses.
You do not bring a flashlight and a set of handcuffs to someone with a firearm or a crossbow.
The nurses union says the security officers aren't enough and the police should be considered.
Why not look at this? This is about making sure that healthcare spaces are safe for everyone, for the staff that provide the care and for the folks that are receiving the care.
The health minister told reporters today that police in hospitals are not being considered at this time, even though the nurses working in them say more needs to be done. Robert Buffum, CTV News, Victoria.
Both Korean Air and Delta Airlines have struck deals to acquire a piece of WestJet. Onyx announcing deals to sell minority stakes in the airlines for more than $1 billion US. Delta will buy 15% of WestJet for $300 million. Korean Air will acquire a 10% stake for $220 million. However, Delta is expected to flip part of its WestJet stake for $50 million to Air France. Onyx bought WestJet in 2019 for $5 billion. The national job numbers were up slightly last month. Manufacturing took a big hit, though, raising the unemployment rate to 6.9%, the highest it's been since last November. And as John Valley-Rao reports, it's most likely because of U.S. tariffs.
Just a week after GM announced more than 700 workers will be laid off at this auto plant in Oshawa, Ontario, another ominous sign that Trump's tariffs are taking a bite, with the latest jobs report showing the country lost 31,000 manufacturing jobs in April, the bulk of them in Ontario.
I really think the blame for this negative number today rests squarely on one set of shoulders, and that's the U.S. president.
In a month where another big automaker, Stellantis, temporarily shut down a plant in Windsor, Ontario for 2 weeks because of U.S. tariffs on imported vehicles, unemployment in Windsor shot up in April to 10.7%, in an area where the auto sector accounts for 4 out of every 10 manufacturing jobs. Nationally, the economy added a better-than-expected 7,000 jobs, though most of it related to temporary hiring during the federal election.
Without that, we would have had a big decline in general employment in Canada, especially led by the manufacturing sector.
With tariffs imposed on cars, steel, aluminum, and other products, the Bank of Canada has warned growth could slow as exports drop, prices rise, and jobs are lost. Overall, in April, the unemployment rate went up from 6.7 to 6.9%.
I don't see any way we don't hit 7% next month. Like, could we touch 7.5 by the end of the summer? It's possible.
Meanwhile, the rise in the unemployment rate makes it more likely the Bank of Canada will further cut interest rates next month in an effort to boost the economy. John Valley-Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
And jobs and the economy will be top of mind when Prime Minister Mark Carney unveils his new cabinet next week. The newly appointed ministers will be sworn in at Rideau Hall on Tuesday morning. Governor General Mary Simon will preside over the swearing-in ceremony. It's unknown how big Carney's new cabinet will be. The PM named 23 ministers to cabinet when he was sworn in back in March after winning the Liberal leadership. Justin Trudeau had 37 ministers in his last cabinet. Meanwhile, the NDP says it's very early in discussions with the Prime Minister about being granted official party status. The New Democrats were reduced to 7 seats in the election, and that's 5 shy of what was needed for official party status. Without it, There are no financial resources provided by Parliament. Well, today, interim leader Don Davies said the NDP is actively working to try to make sure it gets those resources. He says they're needed to advocate effectively for the Canadians who voted for his party. The Prime Minister's office declined to comment on any discussions with the New Democrats. An update on the federal election. A judge has ordered a recount in the Ontario riding of Windsor-Tecumseh Lakeshore. Conservative candidate Kathy Borelli won by 77 votes over the Liberal incumbent. But the Liberal candidate's lawyer had argued some rejected ballots should have counted. That recount is now set for May the 20th. There are now a total of 4 judicial recounts across the country. The federal Liberals have 169 seats. That's 3 shy of a majority. Canadian Cardinals say they consider Pope Leo to be compassionate and they're not focused on his nationality. The Cardinals spoke from the first time since entering the conclave that cut them off from the world and in the election of the first U.S.-born Pope. CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin met with them today in Rome.
Pope Leo XIV led the first full mass of his papacy. And the first American pope began his homily in English.
You have called me to carry that cross and to be blessed with that mission.
This after speaking Italian and Spanish when he was first introduced to the world at St. Peter's Square yesterday.
We pray together, we share, we walk together, we have coffee and donuts and good Italian pastries.
Quebec Cardinal Gérard Lacroix says he has spent some time with the new pope and that he has the qualities needed to unite the church and speak to the world.
You get to see who this man is. You see how he is with others. He talks with everybody.
But pilgrims and tourists milling about on St. Peter's Square were abuzz with news of Leo XIV's nationality today.
I think the fact that he's the first American pope is very exciting, and I hope that the Italians feel the same way.
Not all do, and many analysts had concluded a U.S. pontiff from a military and economic superpower was unthinkable. But Canadian cardinals say he is a universal man who has worked as a missionary in Peru, lived in Rome, and traveled the world.
I don't think anyone really thought of him as an American.
Cardinal Thomas Collins is the retired Archbishop of Toronto.
I don't think anyone thought. The person I'm voting for who is an American.
This was Cardinal Collins' second conclave. 24 hours and 21 minutes. That's how long the cardinals were secluded. A time of deep reflection, say Canada's cardinals, who felt the weight of responsibility as they voted in the Sistine Chapel.
A ritual that is steeped deep in history, and yet has a great significance for people today.
The inaugural Mass in honor of the new Pope is expected to take place on March 18th here at St. Peter's Square. That's expected to be packed once again. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Vatican City.
And Indigenous leaders here in Canada are welcoming the new Pope. They're hoping he continues on the road to reconciliation in this country, started by his predecessor. Alex Carpa has the details.
Millions of people watched as Pope Leo XIV stepped out onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica.
Sancti Apostoli Petrus et Paulus.
It was a joyous day for the 1.4 billion Catholics around the world, but Indigenous advocate Kyle Mason had mixed feelings.
The Catholic Church is probably one of the wealthiest institutions in the world. It's one of the oldest and probably one of the wealthiest. So it is odd to see such a wealthy institution when there is so much poverty throughout the world. Focusing here in Canada, there's a lot of poverty on First Nations and Indigenous communities.
Back in 2022, Pope Francis apologized to the Indigenous people in Canada for the Catholic Church's role in residential schools. He expressed shame for abuses committed by members of the church. Geraldine Shingoose attended residential school in Saskatchewan for 9 years. She says the apology wasn't enough for her after everything she went through as a child. She says she wants to see more dialogue between the new Pope and Indigenous peoples.
Not with Indigenous leadership or with the federal government of Canada, but with residential school survivors. That needs to happen.
National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Cindy Woodhouse, says reconciliation is not easy but necessary and points out there's a lot of work to do.
I hope that we can work on reconciliation together, continue on the hard work that the late Pope had left for us. to finish, and there's lots of work to do.
Chief Woodhouse says there are other topics beyond reconciliation that also need to be discussed with the new Pope, including repatriation of Indigenous artifacts from the Vatican's possessions and education around the Church's role in residential schools. But she says she's hopeful that positive dialogue between the Catholic Church and Indigenous peoples will continue. Alex Carpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
We'll be right back with weather and some good news. There's some rain in the forecast, much needed rain in the forecast. Stay tuned.